So for more on what to make of this 2G controversy, the latest 2G controversy now, we're joined by Pradip Baijal, former chairman of the TRAI. Mr. Baijal, many thanks for joining us. You wouldn't like to be in Mr. Sarma's shoes at this point in time, Mr. Baijal, but look at the reactions that have come in. Bharti and Vodafone saying that these recommendations are shocking, they're retrograde. Reliance Communications saying we're happy, but in fact the one-time spectrum fee should have been retrospective. So industry divided. You know, your points, your thought really on what we've seen happen as far as this fresh 2G controversy is concerned.
The regulators is a very tough job, and these are 400 pages of recommendations. There are some highly positive recommendations, and there are problems with some of the recommendations. But let me first make a disclosure. I am a telecom consultant, and I consult with telecom companies, international and national. But the views that I'll give you are in my personal capacity as a regulator earlier. Now, the first problem that has come is about new and old operators. And the problem is like this. 2 years back, the minister said that we are getting new operators, and these new operators will help us in going deeper into the market, in making the tariffs lower, and the market will grow. Now, whatever the minister had said, that has come true. The market has grown, the market has gone into rural areas and small towns, etc., etc. But then but this requires that that there is a level playing field between old players and the new players. But there is a problem. The regulator is now saying that we will give spectrum first to the old players, then we will give spectrum to the old players for expansion. Then he is saying that we will give spectrum to the old players for further expansion, which really means that the new players who have come in, and they were told that you come in and we will give you a spectrum. Now, they are not getting a spectrum, and they have been asked to stand behind those operators who need more spectrum for their services. Now, this recommendations need another look. There's a second problem.
Okay.
We've had the 3G auctions. Now, when the 3G auctions were taking place, it was necessary that we know the rules of the game regarding spectrum. Now, the 3G auctions have taken place, and now the rules of the game are coming out. If they had come out earlier, it would have been better for all the operators, the new operators and the old operators. It's very important for the regulator to have total transparency, to have predictability, and to ensure a level playing field. The moment you disturb the level playing field, there are big problems. Now, this disturbs the level playing field between the old operators and the new operators, because the old operators' rollout obligations also are not so strict as those of the new operators. And these issues, I'm sure the government would look at.
Fair point you're making, Mr. Baijal, that the fact that there is no level playing field really between the new operators and the old operators. But let's talk about one of the other comments that's coming from the telecom industry, that this is going to put the health of this industry in jeopardy. Look at the kind of money that they're going to have to invest on account of 3G. The final count, at least at the end of day 28, stands at 58,000 crore rupees. In excess of that, that's what the government stands to make. And now if you're going to ask them to pay spectrum fee for the 2G spectrum, the excess 2G spectrum that they have, that's going to be an additional investment or an additional burden for these companies. The charge that this is going to jeopardize the health of the telecom industry.
Well, look, as far as the extra 2G payment is concerned, the regulator has said that there was an agreemented spectrum, 6.2 for GSM and 5 for CDMA. He said more than the agreemented spectrum, now that the 3G auction has come up, therefore more than the agreemented spectrum, you pay the 3G price. He could also have said that more than 6.2, the agreemented spectrum, you go for an auction because the auction has been very successful. But then there are other issues which you must keep at the back of your mind. And the other issues are that the 3G entry fee, because of demand-supply gap, the entry fee auction has been very high, and that has positively disturbed the market. There is another factor. Everyone had calculated that they will buy Chinese equipment. Now, there are some concerns about the Chinese equipment, so I hope the government will look at those concerns and quickly take a decision, because now the cost of the network will also go up. The payment has gone out, and therefore the health will be affected. And I hope the government and the regulator and the operators take action to insulate them from the shock.
Mr. Baijal, just a point with respect to M&A guidelines. The TRAI has said, although it's not mandating it, it is trying to facilitate consolidation in the sector. On the other hand, in the same breath, it goes ahead and adds this one-time spectrum fee. It also goes ahead and say that you'll have to pay for excess spectrum. Isn't that, in a sense, contradictory in the way it is looking at M&A?
You see, before I did Telecom, I did M&A, that is disinvestment. I was doing M&A. There are big problems. First, there were M&A guidelines existing since 2004. Those guidelines were changed. But now the new guidelines that are coming should have allowed the companies to have a fair M&A if the market so requires. Now, your fears are right. If the market gets dislocated, if the share prices get dislocated, if you again have the situation which I had when I joined TRAI in 2003, that all the operators were making losses, then you will need to restructure. Now, when you restructure, one of the easiest methods is allow M&As. Now, if you allow M&As, you can't say, now look, you have 6.2 and the other fellow has 6.2, and now I'm allowing you 6.2, but one of the 6.2 will have to be fully paid for. The entire logic of M&A goes. M&A operators will only do when they can't exist on their own, when two companies can't exist on their own, and they see economic sense in merger. Now, when there is economic sense in merger, you cannot impose extra fees. You cannot impose more fees. The total spectrum scenario can also not be made very unfair to the joint entity, and I'm sure the government would look at these recommendations.
Well, speaking of looking at these recommendations, Mr. Baijal, you've been talking about your experience in 2003, but some would say that Mr. Sarma pretty much is dealing with legacy issues. He acquired a pitch that was already cleared, and so it's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't.
Well, I told you that regulation is a very tough job. The regulator is a small man, a small government servant, and there are very powerful operators. When I joined, the operators were not so powerful. But now, because they have acquired, I remember the total number of customers, mobile customers used to be 1 million. Today there are 600 million. The sector was hardly moving at that time. And today it is growing at a phenomenal speed, much higher than what China ever did. So there are problems. And the regulator has made recommendations, and I'm sure the government would look at the aspect that we had encouraged challengers. And having encouraged challengers, you can't tell them, I will give you no spectrum. So the government will surely look at the distortions that may come. But at the same time, I must say that some of the recommendations that the regulator has made are highly positive. So you have to take a balanced view. And it's a complex job today.
Mr. Baijal, many thanks for joining us with your perspective.